Dawn crossbow builds, yeah.
Hello world! Welcome to Grim Dawn Crossbow Builds, the only place devoted exclusively to crossbow builds for the ARPG Grim Dawn. Today's character is an Infiltrator, which is the combination of a Nightblade and an Inquisitor. We are using the Mythical Northern Wyrm crossbow. Pneumatic Burst is our healing buff. Rune of Hagrad is on right click. On left click we have Amarasta's Blade Burst, and Bladed Rift for movement skill. And finally, Ring of Steel. Let's talk about our skills. On the Nightblade side, our main attack is Amarasta's Blade Burst, which is hard capped. This activates Rumor for cold resistance shred. Lethal Assault is also hard capped, giving a buff to all of our attacks. The flat damage does not buff Rune of Hagrad, but the percentage damage does. Ring of Steel has just 1 point in it, which is buffed by our gear, giving us a little bit of extra crowd control. Ring of Frost gives it a freeze and fully converts the pierce to cold damage. Pneumatic Burst buffs our OA, health regen, and total speed. Shadow Dance buffs our DA and our dodge chance. And Elemental Awakening buffs our frostburn damage and our elemental resistance. Veil of Shadow is at the soft cap, making it easier to crit enemies and slowing them down. Giant's Blood is bound to this. And Night's Chill offers tick damage and cold resistance shred. Phantasmal Armor makes us a little less squishy, buffing our defenses and resistances. Anatomy of Murder gives us some cunning. And Merciless Repertoire buffs our cold damage a little bit. On the Inquisitor's side, our main attack is Rune of Hagrad, also at the hard cap. This triggers Elemental Storm for elemental resistance shred. Biting Cold buffs our cold damage and gives a huge DA shred on enemies. And Chill Surge gives us frostburn damage and extra projectiles. Rune of Hagrad is buffed by artifact handling, also at the hard cap, modifying its total damage by 20% and cutting down on the recharge time. Our exclusive skill is Aura of Censure, giving elemental resistance shred. The Black Blood of Yugal is bound to this. Deadly Aim is close to the soft cap, buffing our OA and crit damage. Lastly, we have all the ranged weapon buffs on the top line. Ranged Expertise gives us attack speed and piercing damage. Most of this is converted to cold by our gear. Bursting Round has 1 point in it, with most of the fire being converted to cold. Chilling Rounds also has 1 point in it, buffed just above the soft cap by our gear. This triggers the Blizzard Devotion proc on critical attack, it goes off quite often. And Storm Spread is another 1 pointer. Again, most of the piercing damage is converted to cold. These weapon pool skills go off when Amarasta's Blade Burst is on cooldown. Let's check out our devotions. Yugal the Insatiable Knight is our tier 3 constellation. You could also go for Leviathan at the bottom. Let's talk about how to get there. A point in red opens up the Viper for some percentage-based elemental resistance shred. A point in green opens up the Spider and the Quill. These are mostly good for affinity points, but they also buff our damage and our energy regen. After that, you can take Rowan's Crown for flat resistance reduction, and Behemoth for more health regen. Now, it's pretty likely that you're going to be leveling as a dual-wield melee character, so you may want to leave Hydra and Kraken for later. I would recommend taking something like the Sailor's Guide for early blue points and resistances. From there, you can take Rumor for cold resistance reduction. You probably will be leveling as a cold build, so this will be useful all the way through. When you get to level 94 and start using the crossbow, then you can take Hydra and Kraken, refunding the Sailor's Guide and most of your crossroads points will enable you to go for Yugal. I chose this one mainly for the defensive buffs like flat health and life leech resistance. The Black Blood of Yugal proc spawns invincible minions. They do basically the same things that Veil of Shadow and Aura of Censure already do, namely slowing enemies down and reducing their damage. But I still find this helpful because they're often hitting enemies that are outside of the range of our auras, giving us a little bit more defense against ranged attackers. Lastly, we have Amatok the Spirit of Winter for armor, DA, and the Blizzard proc. If you prefer to use Leviathan, you'll probably leave this one out. You can also refund the points in Spider and the green point at the crossroads. That will allow you to take some purple point constellations like Owl for instance, and start filling out the Leviathan. I prefer the more defensive setup though. Let's look at our items. Our weapon is the Mythical Northern Wyrm, which comes from a blueprint. Unfortunately, that blueprint is a random drop, so you'll need a bit of luck to find it. Once you craft this thing, it gives +2 to all your skills, cold resistance shred to Veil of Shadow, attack speed, health, piercing to cold conversion, and a bunch of frostburn damage. The piercing to cold conversion is relevant for Rune of Hagarad, ranged expertise, and our weapon pool skills. Our helm is an MI from the areas leading up to Korvac in the Forgotten Gods. This item buffs both of our main skills. Our amulet is the Night Stalker Pendant. This is made from a Cult of Bismiel faction blueprint. It gives +1 to all of our skills and buffs to Rune of Hagarad and Ring of Steel. Our first ring is Night Scorn, which also converts piercing to cold damage, and buffs biting, cold, and shadow dance. Our second ring is the Mythical Band of Black Ice. This gives fire to cold conversion, which is helpful for bursting round and aura of censure. It also gives a bunch of OA and buffs our main skills. Our shoulder piece is Musalaki Shoulder Guards. These give +3 to Rune of Hagarad and Ring of Steel. The suffix of Amarasta's Flurry also buffs Lethal Assault. A defensive prefix like Prismatic is also very desirable, adding up to 80% elemental resistance on a single item. Our gloves are the Mythical Dawn Shard Grip, which make Pneumatic Burst last for a really long time and also help us hardcap artifact handling. Our boots are Mythical Amatox Step, buffing Chill Surge and Ring of Steel. A lot of these items also have physical resistance, bringing our total to 18%. This is pretty high for the current patch and makes this character a little tankier than you might expect. In the metal slot, we have Ilgor's Eternal Curse. This comes from an optional boss in the Steps of Torment and buffs Chilling Rounds and Amarasta's Blade Burst. I think defensive affixes like these are good here. The base item already buffs cold damage. Our belt is the Mythical Chains of Nightfire. This has high armor, more fire to cold conversion, a lot of flat health, good resistances, and +3 to artifact handling. Our relic is Serenity, with +1 to all skills and a circuit breaker proc. Our pants are the Mythical Death Whisper Leggings, which buff our main attacks and give us a retaliation proc. And our chest armor is the Mythical Frostdread Cuirass. This buffs our skills, caps our freeze resistance, and gives a very strong cold damage aura. Let's talk about leveling. You can use ranged Amarasta's Blade Burst for leveling, but it's gonna feel pretty slow. For a much faster and smoother leveling experience, I would recommend Cold Shadow Strike. You'll probably find some of these spectral longswords in the Arkovian Undercity, and if you take dual blades on the top left of the Nightblade tree, you'll be able to dual wield them. These give huge damage over time to Rune of Hagarad and fully convert Shadow Strike to cold damage. Another good early game MI for that playstyle is the Murderer's Breastplate. You'll probably see this inside Cronley's hideout. I recommend picking one up. Those should get you off to a good start. There are a ton of good epic items for this character, but of course you may not see them on your playthrough. The Shade Leather leggings have lower level versions, as do the Rune Singed handguards. There's even a set that you might come across called the Silver Sentinel. This is quite good for the early endgame when you're farming your best in slot items. They're also pretty common drops from chests and totems and things. If this set winds up getting an awakened version in Fangs of Astrakarn, I would definitely consider it for this build. You might also find lower level versions of the Frigid Quill Breath, another cold damage crossbow. The late game version has +4 to Rune of Hagarad. For jewelry, you can find an Inquisitor waistguard from Naxxon Shade in Ugdenbog, or an Inquisitor belt from the Gargoyle areas in Forgotten Gods. You'll be going there anyway to pick up your helm, so it's worth keeping an eye out. You can also get your endgame medal while leveling, although Ilgor is really hard at lower levels, so you may want to wait until after the campaign is done. On the plus side, both of his medals are for a cold damage Nightblade, so even if he drops the wrong one, you'll still be able to use it. Your early game ring will probably be the Viloth's ring. This buffs acid instead of cold damage, but it doesn't matter that much at the beginning. The ether resistance and the points to Amarasta's Blade Burst make this worthwhile. Also worth mentioning are the Death's Vigil faction items, including rings and a pistol that deals exclusively cold damage. Dual wielding those would also be pretty fun. When you get to Honored with Devil's Crossing, I would recommend doing Kasparov's last quest. That will get you an Elena's necklace, which is really good for a cold Nightblade. And as with any character, the Hidden Path quest will get you some good pants. Soleil Sect Leggards would work nicely. I would also like to mention Outcast faction armor here. She has a great shoulder piece for this build. And since you're going to the Steps of Torment anyway, you might as well take her quest in there. Also in the Steps of Torment, you might keep an eye out for the boss's rings. These can work on this build, but they have a very low drop rate, and they're not actually much better than our epic rings, so you might as well stick to those. Alright, let's go to an SR run.